is one of those stories that you probably heard of, but you might not know the details, and a lot of what really happened the day today in this family. So today I will tell you their tragic story. But before I do that, I want to remind everyone that I have a Patreon video up, a new video up. So please check it out if you're interested. It will be linked down below. I will also have another link to sign up for a membership of the channel, and that way you can watch all of these videos ad-free. Now let's talk about how this story started. And Louise met her husband to be in the 80s. She was a teenager back then, and David was already in his 20s. Now, the age difference meant nothing to them. So as soon as Louise turned 16 years old, they got married. For Louise, as for a lot of people that had some kind of abuse at home or a terrible childhood, this was a way to escape that reality. And according to her siblings, Louise was assaulted by her grandfather, and this was, according to her siblings, something that her mother, Louise's mother, allowed and consented to. So, to Louise, David was kind of the, shining, the prince, he was the one who was gonna take her out of that terrible life and take her to a brighter future. David was very successful, money-wise. He was an engineer, and he was described as an overall very smart guy. In the beginning, Louise's family was welcome into their home, and David would fly her siblings regularly to go visit them. Soon enough, this started to slow down, little by little. Within the first 15 years of their marriage, Louise and David had 8 children. Now, Louise's siblings would later on say that they did not witness anything that would alarm them or any kind of abuse in those early years. But one thing was for sure: the couple, the Turbans, were extremely strict with their children. To the outside world, this was successful. They seemed very happy and well-rounded. Then Louise's in-person contact with her siblings became sporadic, and family, little by little, became more isolated. However, you could still check up on them on their social media. Louise would take the time to take pictures of their trips to Disneyland and Vegas. They even renewed their vows in Las Vegas, and their children seemed like they were having a great time. They were smiling and became kind of the perfect family picture, even to the point that the children all wore identical clothes. For some people, that might be kind of creepy, but for others, kind of painted that family being united and very, very happy. But by the year 1998, the Turpin family cut themselves off from friends and family. Things were not as good as they used to be, and they had to go into bankruptcy. David was still making above average salary, but they had more debts and they couldn't just afford them. They were being irresponsible with their money, and they had a lot of unnecessary spending. But the interesting thing here is that none of this lavishness was seen by the kids. It was almost like it was spent exclusively into painting that picture of success for the family. Now, initially, some of their children did attend school, but when they cut themselves from the family and friends in the year 1998, the couple decided that they would homeschool their children instead. It only made sense. They lived in a rural area of Texas, and in the big picture made sense, but the neighbors later on would report feeling like something was not right about this family. There was this family that lived nearby, and they would allow their daughter to go play with the Turpin children. It wasn't all the time, it was every once in a while. But she could kind of get a closer look at the kids. There was this one time when the kids came over to play in this girl's front yard, and the neighbor was wearing white gloves. But then she realized that it was a result of the child's hand only washed up to her wrists, and the rest of her body was a different color because of how dirty it was. Apparently, later on, we will learn a little bit more of these details that I'll share with you, but one of the kids, Jordan, later reported that they were only allowed to bathe once a year. They stayed at the house for a while, but then they left that house in Texas. They had 4 more kids, and the alleged reason for that move was the escape of one of their children. Apparently, one of the girls escaped the house and tried to get help while they were in the Texas house. However, the people she approached for help thought that she was mentally challenged and did not believe her story, so they brought her back to her parents. Now, it seemed that way to the neighbors because we later on learned that the isolation from the outside world was so much, I guess, that the kids were extremely shy. They were supposedly homeschooling the children, but when this actually came to light, they realized that they could barely read and write. When they left that Texas home, they left it in a horrible state. It was not clean. Apparently, it had not been clean in years. Piles of dirty diapers throughout the living areas. The walls were caked in filth. Human excrement found on carpets. And if you thought that was disgusting, it's even sadder to know that they had deceased pets decomposing in the house. Later on, they would find chains attached to the beds as well. But all this came to light after the kids were rescued from this situation. When they left Texas, Louise and David, and their 12 children, moved to California. At that point, their abuse escalated, and their strict religious lifestyle suddenly decayed. 2016, Louise gave birth to their 13th child. And she even was thinking about starting a reality television series with her family. In January 2018, a 17-year-old Jordan Durbin and one of her sisters found a deactivated cell phone and escaped the house. Their siblings became terrified. They knew it was going to be bad when they were caught. So they returned to the house, but Jordan continued and made the call that would eventually save their lives. Now, the abuse the children suffered will likely only come out little by little as the children started to work through their trauma. But what we do know is horrifying. They not only lived in filthy condition and denying them the rights to an education, but being chained to a bed for hours. Sleeping on stained mattresses. These kids were not even allowed to go to the bathroom. They were not only beaten and starved, but the parents would eat in front of their starving children, or even place food on the kitchen counters for them to see, but not to eat. And if any of them ate food without permission, they punished them severely. But they had one activity that the children were allowed to participate, and that was journaling. So the police found large piles of notebooks when they searched the house. Brand new toys in the packaging as a way to kind of taunt their children. If they dared to touch the toys, they would have to pay. All of the children were severely malnourished and mentally underdeveloped. By that time, when Jordan reported what was going on and the authorities did something about it, the oldest child was 29 years old, but weighed only 80 pounds and had a mentality of a first grader. Medical investigations would prove that she had been born completely healthy from a physical and mental perspective. But she was like that because of nearly 30 years of abuse and deprivation. There was also something else that it's interesting, I guess, that they treated the female children different compared to the males. Apparently, the male children also starved and abused. But they had small freedoms that the girls didn't. One of the older boys was even allowed to attend community college. That said, his mother would drive him to his classes and wait outside for him until school was over and then bring him straight home. I couldn't find if this was some kind of typical college class, or if this was more like welding or mechanic, or I don't know, but it kind of contradicts what they share, that they could barely read. So maybe he did know how to. Maybe he was a smart boy and was taking college classes. Maybe he was doing some kind of a short career. I'm not sure about that. But after they were rescued, the state took care of the children, managing their recovery and helping them to learn to trust people. The court charged David and Louise with 14 different felony counts of false imprisonment and torture. They initially claimed that they were innocent, but in the year 2019, they admitted their guilt, and they were each sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. They will have the possibility of parole after serving 22 years of their sentence. As for their kids, they are still making slow and steady progress. Some experts claim that it's not likely that they will ever achieve their full potential, but they're doing the best they can with what they have and this second chance. One of the most tragic parts of this case is all the missed opportunities really for an early rescue. If you think about it, there were red flags everywhere. Although it's easy to look back in hindsight and but it's kind of unbelievable that they were living under those circumstances and nobody noticed. Including the time that that kid went to the neighbor's house. And when the kid was returned home, Louise and David explained about their mental problem the kid had, and that was it. But after the rescue, countless neighbors came forward to say that they had noticed odd things about the family, yet no one called the authorities. Now I understand that people didn't want to accuse them without, being 100% sure. And that maybe they didn't want to stick their noses too far into their neighbor's business. But it really kind of guess this is a good example of how we should be involved and the responsibility we all have when it comes to children. If any one of the neighbors would have called the police, the least that they could have done was to go into the house and talk to the Turpins. It would have been a red flag of abuse. They would have been able to see in the conditions that they lived. And maybe this would have ended sooner for these children. They are all in very different healing journeys. It is going to be hard for all of them in different ways. And in these cases, sometimes even the kids that are being abused by their parents have that emptiness when they're not with their parents. That is not an uncommon behavior, really. In abuse cases, victims sometimes struggle to rationalize the feelings of attachment they develop towards their abusers. Some people judge the kids. I mean, some were over 18 years old, so technically adults. Why would they stay inside the house? Besides being restrained by their parents on some occasions. But it's easily explained by the mental abuse that they endured. You have to remember that their parents isolated them. They probably had no idea who the police are, what the police is, or if they could trust them, because it is likely that their parents told them not to trust them. But why would David and Louise do this to their children? There's a possibility of a mental health issue, but really it cannot excuse what they did to these children. Mind you, their own children. Apparently David seemed to have the one that was in charge the most in this couple. He was the one who worked outside home. He had all the financial control over the family. So there is a possibility that Louise felt like she had no other option but to do what he asked her to do. But the children disagree with this and said that their mother was the one that regularly abused them without the father being present, and that she usually was the one who would start their torture. A lot of missed opportunity by the authorities and by the neighbors and people who lived around them. But in the end, it was David and Louise who chose to have these children. But why would they do that to them? It is still the main question. Now I hope that these children can recover. These people, even adults now, much damage done to these children that it was 100% unnecessary. Tell me what you think, because at this point I am very disheartened by this, and I don't think I can find any crazy theories to say or explain why in their heads made sense to do this to their own children. Why feel the need to bring children to this world and then do this to them? It just doesn't make sense in my head. It never will. Do you have a theory? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. I truly appreciate your support. And I'll talk to you guys next time.